faithfully sharing insights and exploring global bestsellers. Hi there, this is Sally's Book Club. Today, I'm going to introduce you to the book, The Courage to be Disliked. Its subtitle is Adler's Philosophy, Lessons from the Father of Self-Development. Oh, many folks are scared of being disliked and want to be liked by everyone. But this book shows you how to find the courage to be disliked. Sounds weird, right? Why encourage people to be okay with being disliked? Alfred Adler, the famous psychologist, thought that most of our worries come from chasing others' approval. We're so caught up in what others think that we end up feeling trapped. If we're not afraid of being disliked, we can own our lives and go after the happiness we truly want. So, having the courage to be disliked is crucial for a fulfilling life. Alfred Adler was a renowned psychologist from Austria, and he's one of the big three in psychology, along with Freud and Jung. And growing up, Adler was short, considered unattractive, and sickly. He didn't get much love from his parents, had a car accident, suffered from major illnesses, and almost died a few times. Adler's childhood was shadowed by death and feelings of inferiority, and that really shaped his ideas in psychology. Adler really valued self-worth and impact. He thought that our lives aren't set by past events, but by how we see things and why we do what we do. That's why Adler is called the father of modern self-psychology. But Adler was from over a century ago, so his writings can seem a bit out of reach and tough to grasp for regular folks. The book, The Courage to be Disliked, was written by two Japanese authors. One is Ichiro Kishimi, an expert on Adler's psychology who's helped many young people in Japan. The other writer is Fumitake Koga, with multiple bestsellers to his name. In the book, a young guy with lots of worries goes to see a wise philosopher. Their conversations show how Adler's concepts work in today's world. It digs into everyday problems we face and gives practical ways to solve them. Since it came out, The Courage to be Disliked has won over lots of fans. It was Amazon Japan's top seller in 2014 and got adapted into a TV drama on Fuji TV in 2017. Here in China, many counselors recommend this book. If you're struggling with inferiority or relationship issues, I believe it'll really open your eyes. All right, I'll walk you through 3 key takeaways from this book. First, how courage helps you take charge of your life. Second, freeing yourself from relationship troubles. Third, where does courage come from? Okay, let's start with the first point. How courage helps you take charge of your life. Adler's psychology is all about courage. He believed everyone controls their own life. With courage, you can change things right now. Having the courage to pursue happiness solves all life's troubles. This idea is revolutionary because people often think their lives are determined by past experiences. Like that viral question online, does childhood trauma last forever? With over 10,000 replies. Most answers shared personal stories of childhood hurts still affecting them today. This view is called determinism. First proposed by Freud, it's widely accepted today. That Adler rejected determinism entirely. If life were set by the past, he argued, change would be impossible. Nobody can time travel to undo the past or avoid getting hurt. Plus, determinism can't explain why many with painful childhoods don't develop psychological issues. Take 2 brothers. Their mom died young, dad was a drunk who ignored them. The older brother strived for success. The younger sank into self-destruction. Years later, the older became successful while the younger landed in prison for drunken assault. When asked what shaped them, both brothers said, with a father like that, what else could I do? We often see this in real life. People with similar backgrounds develop totally different personalities, outgoing or shy, optimistic or pessimistic. There's a Chinese saying, one mother raises 100 different children, which describes this situation. Why is that? Adler believes that what truly determines our feelings isn't the objective events that happen to us, but our own subjective views on those events. For instance, when thirsty and seeing a half full glass of water, some people cheer, wow, lucky there's still half a glass, while others lament, oh no, why is there only half a glass? We think it's the half glass of water that makes us happy or disappointed. But the real reason is how we subjectively view that half glass of water. Therefore, as long as we change our perspective, life can transform dramatically. Based on this, Adler developed another theory to explain human behavior called teleology. The view of teleology is this: we do things not because of past experiences, but because we have current goals we want to achieve. So we actively choose our present lives. For example, we study hard to get good grades and work hard to earn more money. But Adler's teleology covers a broader scope. In his view, all behavior is driven by some purpose. It's just that often we're not aware of these purposes. For instance, at dinner, if a waiter spills your drink, you might get furious. You might say, I had no purpose. The emotion just took over and I couldn't control myself. Then imagine if it were your boss who spilled the drink. Would you get furious? Probably not. So, emotions that seem uncontrollable are actually under our control. We get angry at the waiter because our purpose is to make him apologize quickly. Anger is just a tool to achieve that goal. With the boss, we don't want an apology at all, so we naturally don't get angry. Another example, some people, due to parents constantly arguing in childhood, develop trauma, leading to fear of marriage and unwillingness to interact with others. Adler doesn't deny that a bad family environment can affect a child's mental state, but he believes that if someone truly wants to overcome the negative effects, they can choose not to be affected. If they still can't interact with others now, that's their own choice with some other purpose behind it. Um, Hearing this, some might get angry. I'm clearly suffering, and you say it's my own choice. Why would I torment myself like this? Adler's answer has many reasons. Perhaps he's afraid of getting hurt after interacting with others, or maybe he's used to being single and feels uneasy about building close relationships or changing his lifestyle. So he simply chooses to avoid it. In short, whether we realize it or not, behind every action is a current purpose. And these purposes ultimately lead us to choose our present lives. Past experiences do influence the present, but in the end, we ourselves decide our current lives. This view might feel annoying because it seems like saying all our troubles and pains are self-inflicted. But think about it this way. Blaming others for life's problems feels great, but it means our happiness depends on them. How miserable is that? All right, after hearing this, you probably get why Adler's psychology is called the psychology of courage, right? We often think about what methods can solve life's problems, but Adler's teleology tells us that before seeking solutions, we must ask ourselves if we want to change. Taking that step requires courage to take responsibility and admit that the root of all problems lies within us. For many, that's really hard. But only by bravely doing this can we change our perspective and ultimately transform our lives. That's what we covered in part one. So, how exactly do we change? Adler believed the fundamental source of life's troubles is relationships, and the key to freeing yourself is having the courage to be disliked, shifting how you see connections. Now, let's dive into the second key takeaway: how courage helps you escape relationship troubles. Hearing this, you might wonder, sure, relationships cause troubles, but there are other issues like worrying about money or height. Those seem unrelated to relationships, huh? But in Adler's view, worrying about money stems from comparison and needing money to trade for others' work in society, all part of relationships. If you live alone in the mountains farming with no one to compare to and being self-sufficient, of course you won't have money worries. Same with height. If you don't compare to others, why would you worry about being short? It's from this perspective that Adler concluded all troubles come from relationships. And in daily life, many relationship troubles stem from inferiority complexes and the need for approval. So now I'll explain how courage, especially the courage to be disliked, can free you from these troubles, starting with these two aspects. First, let's talk about inferiority complexes. Adler believed inferiority is part of human nature. Everyone has an ideal self and goals they hope to achieve. When we can't become that ideal self, we feel inferior. Adler saw a positive side to inferiority. It can drive us to improve, like a writer who thinks their work isn't good enough, so they improve their craft and eventually create something great. That's positive. But this positive inferiority requires comparing to your past self, not others. In other words, we aim to be better than we were, not better than others. If we always compare to others, we start seeing them as enemies. Then they become opponents who might mock, attack, or undermine us. Relationships become constant power struggles with no peace. Suddenly, everyone feels like an enemy. No wonder this mindset causes distress. Another problem, we use our flaws as excuses for not succeeding. For example, some with education insecurities work harder to compensate. Others use it as an excuse with my poor education, my bother trying, and give up. So, how do we eliminate inferiority? Adler thought feeling inferior about lacking skills is normal, so we don't need to eliminate it. The key is realizing life's troubles come not from lacking ability, but lacking courage to take responsibility. With the courage to admit that all problems stem from ourselves and not fear the pain and setbacks of change, we can turn inferiority into fuel for progress. After covering inferiority, let's discuss another common source of trouble: the desire for approval. As kids, we want approval from parents and teachers. As adults, we seek it from colleagues and friends. Everyone has this urge, but Adler firmly opposes seeking approval. In his view, approval seeking means living up to others' expectations, living for them. This forces us to constantly worry about others' opinions, checking if we meet their expectations. But often you can't just ask, so you're left guessing, which breeds frustration. Many develop social anxiety and other issues from caring too much about others' judgments. Adler believed we live not for others but for ourselves. Blindly chasing approval traps us in others' lives, robbing us of true joy. So we can ignore others' expectations and just live fully. Then how do we abandon approval seeking to live for ourselves? Adler's solution is task separation. The purpose of tasks, here, tasks refer to responsibilities we face at each life stage. For example, academic tasks in school, work tasks after entering society, after starting a family, family tasks with partners and children. Task separation means clearly distinguishing your responsibilities from others, focusing on yours without interfering. Adler stressed that living for yourself means others aren't living for you, two inseparable sides of the same coin. For example, what should an employee do with a strict boss who never praises them and constantly criticizes? Some might try reading the boss's mind to please them, avoiding conflict, and always agreeing. But Adler rejects this. He believes that whether the boss likes you or not is the boss's task. You shouldn't interfere. Focus on your own work responsibilities and find ways to improve performance. For this goal, don't avoid necessary arguments with a boss. Don't escape conflict just fearing criticism. Besides, any competent boss welcomes employees who debate work issues. Some might ask, if conflict makes the boss retaliate, hindering work, what then? Of course, you can consider changing jobs. But remember, we change jobs not because the boss dislikes us, but because we can't fulfill our professional value. The former is someone else's life task. The latter is our own. All actions should aim to complete our life tasks, not to please others. The same applies elsewhere. If we're determined to live for ourselves, we shouldn't care about others' judgments. How others judge us is their life task. Don't interfere, or we're back to seeking approval. But wanting approval is human nature. Truly ignoring others' opinions, Adler says the key is having courage to be disliked. Avoiding dislike means pleasing everyone, the least free life, and utterly impossible. Only when unafraid of being disliked and not seeking approval can we truly separate tasks and live freely. In other words, the courage to be disliked is our symbol of pursuing freedom. All right, let's summarize part two. Life's troubles come from relationships, with inferiority and approval seeking as the main sources. Seeking for inferiority, Adler says compare yourself to your past self, not others. Have courage to take responsibility, letting inferiority fuel effort, not excuse laziness. For approval seeking, Adler suggests task separation. Focus on your tasks without interfering in others, achieving true freedom. And the key to task separation is having the courage to be disliked. So you'll notice courage plays a vital role in Adler's psychology. It's the foundation for solving all problems. Then how do we gain courage? Now, let's move to the third key point. Where does courage come from? Adler's answer is courage comes from community. Simply put, community means seeing others as partners and experiencing self-worth by contributing to them. People only gain courage when they feel valued. Building community feeling requires three things: self-acceptance, trust in others, and contribution to others. Here, others means other people, right? I'll explain each one. First, self-acceptance. We hear this often. Some think it means affirming and encouraging yourself, but that's not self-acceptance. The best explanation comes from American theologian Reinhold Niebuhr's prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. For example, an introverted employee gets nervous presenting at meetings. Denying reality by insisting, I won't be nervous, backfires because they'll focus on monitoring their nerves instead of the presentation. They should accept that public speaking makes them nervous. That's unchangeable. Then focus on what they can control, preparing thoroughly. Now, about trust in others. In Adler's view, trust isn't exactly the same as belief. Adler split belief into two: conditional trust, credit, and unconditional trust, faith. Credit is conditional, like getting a bank loan with your house as collateral. The bank lends because of that condition. But Adler's trust is unconditional. He believed harmonious relationships must be built on unconditional trust, because only through unconditional trust can we build truly deep partnerships. If we constantly fear betrayal in relationships, we'll always see others as enemies, making deep connections impossible. Like someone in love who obsessively hunts for signs of cheating, that relationship won't last. The team where members suspect each other of sabotage will lack any real strength. You might wonder, unconditional trust sounds nice, but what if I still get betrayed? Adler explains, first, you're not meant to trust everyone. If you don't want a close relationship with someone, no need to trust them. So, trust is only required when you genuinely want to build a connection. Second, even if betrayed, remembering task separation. Betrayal is their task beyond your control, but building harmonious relationships is your task. That's your responsibility. So you decide whether to continue the relationship. If not, you can end it. That's your own task. Finally, let's discuss contribution to others. Adler believed many struggle to like themselves. Contributing to others lets us feel valued, accept ourselves, and build self-love. But it's not self-sacrifice. The easiest example, work. While money drives work, people also feel useful through labor, gaining a sense of value. Many wealthy folks keep working not for money, but to contribute and belong. That's their social anchor. But some say, I contribute, yet no one thanks or recognizes me. What then? Adler's answer remains simple. Handle it through task separation. How others view your contribution is their task. You can't interfere. Otherwise, it turns into seeking their approval. What matters is that you recognize your own contribution. As long as you feel you've made a difference to others, it's valuable. Even if others dislike you, it's fine. Self acceptance, trust in others, and contribution to others are all connected and essential. Because by achieving self acceptance, you distinguish what can be changed from what can't. So you have the courage to choose trust in others. Because by trusting others, you build genuine partnerships, making you willing to contribute. Because by contributing to others, you experience self worth, enabling self acceptance and the courage to be disliked. Taking life responsibility. All right, to summarize part three, the key to gaining courage is experiencing self worth through community feeling. To gain community feeling, achieve three things: self acceptance, trust in others, and contribution to others. These three influence each other. Achieve them to gain the courage to be disliked and take life responsibility. With that, we've almost covered the book, The Courage to be Disliked. Let's revisit. Adler's psychology is the psychology of courage. Courage is a person's most vital quality. In Adler's view, our present life is determined not by past experiences, but by our own perceptions of things. So have courage, stop seeking approval, take steps to change, and you'll overcome troubles. And life's troubles all stem from relationships. To overcome troubles, take responsibility for your life. Don't use inferiority as an excuse, but let it drive your efforts. At the same time, have the courage to be disliked. Use task separation to escape approval seeking. Focus on your own tasks, as courage comes from self worth. Through self acceptance, trust in others, and contribution in community partnerships, we experience self worth and gain courage, including the courage to be disliked. All right, that wraps up this book summary. You'll find the notes below the audio. See you tomorrow.